All right, everybody, I'm Logan Alec, and this is my stimulus update for Wednesday, June 10th. In today's video, I want to cover two things. First thing is more chatter among Senate Republicans regarding the next stimulus bill. Some of it more the same, but some of it actually kind of new and promising. The other thing I want to talk about today is the Senate Finance Committee's hearing that they held yesterday regarding the role of unemployment insurance and particularly extended supercharged federally funded unemployment benefits like the FPUC and the coronavirus pandemic. But first, I just want to talk briefly about scams. I know I talk about these a lot, but I just want to keep bringing it up periodically just so that hopefully some of you, if you're approached by a scammer, you'll remember some of these things I say and not rush into a scam head first. So yesterday, there was a Senate Judiciary Committee on coronavirus scams. Secret Service Assistant Director Michael D'Ambrosio testified at this hearing, and he said, and I quote, "Even if we assume a very low rate of fraud," and he's talking about fraud specifically pertaining to the nearly $3 trillion of relief that has been passed by Congress over the past few months in response to the coronavirus pandemic. Even if we assume a very low rate of fraud of just 1%, we should expect more than $30 billion will end up in the hands of criminals. And that is likely an underestimation of the risk and just one portion of the full range of risks at play. So I beg you, if you're a small business owner, still waiting for your PPP funding, if you're still waiting for your stimulus check, if you just filed for unemployment recently, please, please, please be very wary for these scams, okay? Just because someone sounds very trusting and is giving you hope over the phone or in the form of a letter doesn't mean that they can be trusted, okay? You have to realize that these are desperate times, and when you're desperate, you might not be thinking as clearly as you would otherwise outside of that moment, all right? So please be very wary. I've talked a lot about scams and how to spot scams previously on the channel. All right, now let's talk about the chatter by GOP senators, all right? Let's start at the top with Mitch McConnell. So, yesterday during lunch, he said more of the same. He does not anticipate the Senate will take up another relief package until after the 2-week July 4th recess. The number 2 Republican senator echoed that. He said that seems like a pretty wise strategy. We'll have a better sense for what we'll need to do probably a few weeks down the road. So this is basically more of the same of what I told you yesterday. Lamar Alexander, Republican senator from Tennessee, said that he also viewed waiting until after July 4th as the right timeline. He also said this: "I think we've spent a massive amount of money. Not all of it has even been spent yet, and I think we need to evaluate what we've done before we do anything else." This is typical Republican Party line here. I do take some issue with when he says not all of it has even been spent yet. Okay, fair. Right? For example, the PPP, not all of the PPP money has gone out yet, but I think something like 80% or close to 80% has gone out. Okay? Has it all been spent? Well, that could be word games there, right? I got my PPP loan, right? Have I spent it all on the employees yet? No. But I've got it, and it gives me the reassurance, right, that business can continue as usual for my business, right? A spokesman for Senator Chuck Grassley, who chairs the Finance Committee, said it's too early to say what the new legislation might encompass. That said, it appears that the $1 trillion, right, that we've heard reports that McConnell, that's his line in the sand, and we've heard the White House talk about $1 trillion. Apparently that's not official from the Republicans' perspective yet. Okay, and this is both good and bad. Anyway, let me tell you where I'm getting this. So, another senator, Republican senator, Senator Kevin Cramer from North Dakota, said, whether it's $1 trillion, $500 billion, or $2 trillion, I don't know. Why is this bad? This is bad because it tells me that Senate Republicans have not seriously started talking about the next relief bill. Okay? We know there's lots of ideas out there. We know Trump wants payroll tax cut. We know that Trump wants maybe tax deductions for restaurants. We've talked about the White House talking about tax credits for vacations. We know McConnell wants liability protection. We know some state and local will be in there. But when I read a statement like this, unless there's a lot of stuff happening behind closed doors, right? But when I hear a Republican senator saying whether it's $1 trillion, $500 billion, or $2 trillion, I don't know, that tells me that not a lot of talk has been going on right? But why is this potentially good? It's potentially good because he literally said it could be $2 trillion, right? He doesn't know, but it could be. If it's $2 trillion, I think there's a pretty good chance there will be another stimulus check in there, okay? If it's $500 billion, half a trillion dollars, I really don't think that's happening. If it's $1 trillion, which is kind of the number that we've kind of been banding around, right, speculating based on various reports, it could go either way with respect to another round of stimulus, okay? So that's a very interesting statement. Senator Susan Collins, Republican senator from Maine, she's up for re-election in November, and it's going to be a very contentious race. She actually wants the Senate to move faster than it has been. She says, I would prefer that we act sooner. Communities are really suffering and seeing sharp revenue drops. Republican senator, she's a Republican senator, and she wants the next stimulus bill to be passed before the July 4th recess. That would mean that they get things underway really quickly here before the end of the month. Chuck Schumer, top Democrat in the Senate, of course, takes the opportunity to take a pot shot at the Republicans. He said, if the President and Senate Republicans declare victory too early, if they lull into complacency now, if they wait too long to pass another round of emergency relief, the economic conditions in our country will deteriorate. If we do nothing, more Americans will lose their jobs. All right? So while it seems that some Republicans are calling for quicker action by the Senate, the majority of GOP senators are still saying we got to wait and see. Okay, so it looks like it's got to happen. Going to happen at the end of next month, right? Is when talks are going to get underway, and hopefully they pass a bill, because the August recess, they all take August off, right? And September seems very far away at this point. So I think in the next month is looking at what it's going to be like. Now let's talk about the Senate Finance Committee hearing yesterday on unemployment. Okay, so I'm basically going to tell you what the Secretary of Labor said there. I'm going to tell you what the chairman, Chuck Grassley, had to say. I'm going to tell you what the top Democrat on the Senate Finance Committee had to say, and a couple other cats. All right. So what did the Secretary of Labor say? Secretary of Labor Eugene Scalia. Right? And he's a Trump guy, right? He was part of Trump's cabinet. He's appointed by Trump. He's a Republican. He is the son of the late Supreme Court Associate Justice Antonin Scalia. Passed away a few years ago. Anyway, here's what he had to say. First of all, he starts talking about the $600 FPUC and the congressional response in the CARES Act. He, of course, praises the president. He said, fortunately, President Trump and Congress responded quickly. He says the reason why it was $600 a week during the CARES Act was because they were afraid that state unemployment systems wouldn't be able to do anything other than a flat payment at the time. Okay, so it's kind of poo-pooing the $600 a week there, saying, well, that was the best we could do at the time, kind of implying, well, we might be able to do something a little more targeted now. Because, Republicans, they want targeted right now. Okay? They're not so gung-ho about another $600 to everybody. They may not be so gung-ho about another stimulus check to everybody, right? They may be looking for more targeted legislation. Of course, Scalia is not in Congress, but he's going to kind of be speaking on behalf of the White House here, because he is a member of Trump's cabinet. All right, here we go. Scalia goes on to say, some observers and some members of this committee have expressed concern that the generous $600 CARES Act benefits may deter recipients' return to work as businesses reopen. Recent analyses, including by the University of Chicago and by this administration, found that more than 2/3 of workers will receive unemployment benefits greater than prior weekly wages, and that approximately 20% of unemployed workers will receive benefits double their pre-layoff wages. So we've talked about this before on the channel, and I'm sure you all know people who are making more, significantly more sometimes, on unemployment than they were when they were working. Republicans obviously don't like that. They want people to get back to work, and they view the extra $600 weekly FPUC as antithetical to that goal. Scalia goes on to say, well, most workers prefer work. There will always be some who will not energetically seek employment when unemployment benefits are available. The greater the unemployment benefit, the greater the incentive for that handful of workers to remain out of the workforce. Okay? He goes on to say the CARES Act unemployment benefit was an extraordinary benefit for the extraordinary situation that American workers began to confront in March. The CARES Act benefits were intended to be temporary and will expire at the end of next month, by which point we expect the economy to be deep into the process of reopening, with shutdown orders ended, and, as Friday's jobs report confirms, millions of Americans freed to return to work. Unemployment benefits will still be needed past that date, of course, but the circumstances that originally called for the $600 plus up will have changed. Policy will need to change as well. Here's the Secretary of Labor stating that the $600 a week cannot continue past July 31st. Of course, Republicans are going to point to his testimony as why the Democrat idea should not go through. This isn't to say that there will be not perhaps a reduced $600 FPUC weekly afterwards or something like that. We know that Republicans were calling for that in the debates around the original CARES Act, right? And Scalia himself says unemployment benefits will still be needed past that date, okay? And by the way, on this point, when you see videos, right, like Michael Rubel, he's posted some about a $2,400 a month stimulus check. He's referring to the $600 a week FPUC potentially being extended past July 31st, which we know Democrats have been calling for over a month now, okay? And we know it's not going to happen, okay? Because Republicans control the Senate, right? They've expressed they don't want to do that. We have the Secretary of Labor, whose testimony they're going to point to, right, in their congressional debates, saying that's not necessary, okay? So just public service announcement. If you see $2,400 a month stimulus checks, all right? The Secretary of Labor goes on to say now we're facing a different situation than we were in March. He brings up one thing we've learned is how poorly targeted the additional $600 per week payments are, as it appears most recipients are being paid more on UI than they were when working. This discourages people from returning to work or taking a new job, delaying the recovery. Okay, Senator Grassley, who's the Republican chair of the Senate Finance Committee, in his testimony, he brought up a few letters that his constituents have written him for business owners. One letter said, "We're trying to hire back laid off COVID-19 related employees for $15 an hour, and we find that they're receiving the equivalent of more than that in unemployment benefits. Suddenly the government became our competitor. How could that happen?" Okay, so Grassley's obviously opposed to extending the $600 FPUC. He quotes the CBO study that said employment would be lower going forward with the additional $600 FPUC than if it wasn't. And he said, "This doesn't sound like a recipe for economic growth, especially given last week's jobs report, which shows people are returning to their jobs and that millions more expect to return soon." So that's kind of the Republican position, right? They're saying, look, jobs are looking up, but it's hard for businesses to rehire some of these folks because they're making more unemployment. That seems pretty sensible to me, right? I'm not saying that there can't be any more federally funded unemployment benefits, but the extra $600 a week, if that many people are making more unemployment than they were when they were working, yeah, that can make an economic recovery tough. All right, Senator Ron Wyden, who's the number one Democrat on the Finance Committee, had this to say. "Bottom line, this crisis will go on a lot longer if the Trump administration and Senate Republicans start yanking out these key pillars of economic support like supercharged unemployment benefits. Main Street businesses nationwide are hanging on by a thread." That seems a little inconsistent to me. Like, yeah, Main Street businesses nationwide are hanging on by a thread, maybe because they can't hire people back because they're making more on unemployment. Honestly, I think Wyden, this Democrats is speaking a little too highly of human nature here. Here's what he said. "I talked to the out-of-work people I've spoken with during this crisis. I've heard from people who want to get back to their jobs. They believe in the dignity of work. They want to earn their pay and support their families and return to the lives they had before. They know that they're more likely to get ahead if they're working and moving up the economic ladder than being on unemployment." I'm going to be honest. If you told me I could get paid more money for doing nothing than doing something, I would probably do nothing in terms of working, right? So I think the senator here is speaking a little too highly of the work ethic of the average person. He goes on to say that these supercharged unemployment benefits are what's saving millions of jobless people from hunger and homelessness in the middle of this pandemic. The Senate has a choice to make. It's about fairness for the tens of millions out of work. It's about fairness for African Americans who are disproportionately suffering. It's about fairness for the blue-collar worker who looks around and sees a lot more support going to corporations than to workers. The only fair choice to make is to extend supercharged unemployment benefits and to do it now. Okay, so that was the testimony of all these folks. There was a Q&A session during which various senators had the opportunity to ask Secretary of Labor Eugene Scalia various questions, and that didn't really go so well. The Democrats didn't like what he had to say at all. Ron Wyden, at the end of the questioning period, he's the guy who I just read his testimony, he said, I think you're just misleading the committee. You're misleading the public and on a key question, which is what to do going forward. So obviously Ron Wyden's pissed because he's a Democrat and he wants to extend this extended order weekly FPUC, and he just got pissed there at the end. He was just getting angry, he was getting emotional because the Secretary of Labor wasn't saying what he wanted him to say. Sherrod Brown, another Democratic senator from Ohio, basically said that the Secretary of Labor was basically just giving a President Trump re-election talk. He said, we've heard the Trump commercial over and over again, right? After Scalia went out of his way to praise Trump on the economy. And Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, Democratic senator from Rhode Island, said Scalia was filibustering. He said, I'm starting to think you're having fun filibustering us. It's become a little bit of a sport for you to filibuster us and kind of yuck it up. I don't think that's fair to us, right? So basically he's saying, Scalia, your answers are too long. It's not giving us time to ask you the questions that we want to answer. So it's kind of more the same on that front, right? Senate Finance Committee held this hearing, and Secretary of Labor Scalia basically said what the Republicans wanted him to say, and Democrats didn't like that. And that's that. All right, so that's my update for today. I hope you all have a great, wonderful day today. Please make the most of it wherever you are and whatever you're doing today, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.